And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
As you may know, this is an unscripted, unedited, totally extemporaneous little bit that we do each week. People often ask me, do you use a teleprompter? I say, no, if we did, it would be a whole lot better. And so because it isn't scripted, every once in a while there's a little faux pas on my part. And last week there were two little things I left out that were very, very important. One, I wanted to be sure to wish my friends of the Christian faith a very blessed Holy Week, and in so doing, I forgot to wish my Jewish friends a very happy Passover. So a belated, most happy Passover. I hope it was a wonderful commemoration for all of my friends who are Jewish. Second, I talked about Eddie Robinson and the fact that he had missed a Major League Baseball game last year for the first time in 75 years, that he had recently reached his 100th birthday and was going to be able to go to opening day, which took place this week. What I failed to mention was that Eddie Robinson is the oldest living Major League Baseball player. That provides a little bit of context for the whole story. And that the reason it had been only 75 years that he had missed a game was that he had taken time off, as so many others did, to serve our country in World War II, departing from the Major League ball field where he was playing and therefore missing some games back then. He went to a Cactus League game this year and he said nothing about the game itself. He simply said, "I stood for the national anthem." What a guy. And today marks what many believe is the best day in college basketball. The semifinals of the NCAA championship, the Final Four, 2 1 seeds, a 2 and an 11. It's bound to be really exciting basketball leading up to Monday night's finale. This week, President Biden rolled into my home state for a visit to beautiful Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he discussed his proposed infrastructure spending package, another $2+ trillion in federal spending on what he calls infrastructure. And you know, I've always hated that word because it doesn't really tell us what it means. It's one of those corporate speak vocabulary words that folks like to use because it makes them sound really, really smart. But if it means roads and bridges and ports, most Americans would agree that that's spending that is well done. I often remind my Republican and conservative friends, and we're constitutional conservatives, that the United States Constitution only specifically mentions spending on two things: the military, national defense, and roads, specifically spelled out. So constitutionally, there's a good place to put the taxpayers' money. But the sheer magnitude of the package that Joe Biden is bringing forth is what calls into question his true intent. If it's for roads and bridges and ports, it's only about $115 billion. That leaves over $2 trillion. It's like roughly $2.2 trillion. You know, those numbers just are staggering. We don't even understand what $1 trillion truly is, but we throw it around anymore like it's a million. But $2+ trillion of additional debt on our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren for what? So apparently there's a new definition of infrastructure because to the Biden administration, it means climate change and social justice spending. And that is going to be a problem once it gets to the Congress, because a lot of folks wonder whether that's where the taxpayers' money ought to be being put right now, particularly after we've gone through trillions of dollars of spending for so-called COVID relief, which were unrelated to COVID completely, and which were social spending that the Democrats, the really far left Democrats, not all Democrats, have wanted for a long time. It's essentially backdoor spending for the Green New Deal, something that the Democrats know they can't get through Congress on its own merits, so they're going to try to force it through in other ways, hiding it behind COVID relief and so-called infrastructure spending. There's little doubt that the country needs to invest more right now on deteriorating roads, substandard bridges, because public safety and economic growth demand it. Joe Biden chose to come into Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the home of coal, steel, and natural gas, and raise up climate change spending as the flag that he wants everybody to salute. It didn't go over very well, nor should it have. And something else that shouldn't have gone over very well is the situation at the southern border. Tragically, this is what happens when you invite open border policy. We now have children wrapped up in tin foil, lying on concrete floors, side by side, not socially distanced in any way, shape, manner, or form, in some horrific conditions. Imagine, as I said last week, that this were going on under the Trump administration and what the media would be screaming from every corner about. But the media isn't even allowed in because the Biden administration does not want the American people to see what's going on under their watch. They simply want to blame every problem on the southern border on the Trump administration, who actually had the situation under control, but which is now rampant with problems and abuse. Open borders simply don't work. Securing our borders has to be the first element of reformation of our immigration system, and keeping the front door of legal immigration open and the back door of illegal immigration slammed shut is at the core of good and sensible public policy. Most Americans agree that we need some serious reforms and common sense adjustments to our election laws so that the abuses and irregularities we saw in 2020 aren't repeated in 2022, 2024, and beyond. And the state of Georgia went about doing that recently, and now the media and the far left of the Democrat Party are screaming bloody murder. They're even threatening to take away the All-Star Game and other sporting events from Atlanta as punishment for what the Georgia legislature did. And what's so awful? Voter ID requirements. You know, you can't get on a plane, train, or rent an automobile without a picture ID. You can't even buy a cell phone. But these folks think that you ought to be able to go in and vote without presenting a picture ID. And the result is their default always is it's racist. One other thing that some on the left thought was racist were some minor adjustments to Georgia's no-excuse mail-in absentee voting system. Incidentally, Delaware, Joe Biden's home state, doesn't even have that provision, so they might want to think twice about what they call racist. And halfway across the country, a congressional race was finally determined, one where the Democrats had contested an election where the Republican had already been seated in Congress because of a state-certified election. Didn't we hear from them that we shouldn't be calling into question state-certified results? Another example of the hypocrisy of the far left. Even some centrist Democrats argued against the challenge to that victory. But if you look at Stacey Abrams down in Georgia, which we talked about a minute ago, she still hasn't conceded. Her race for governor from 2018, where she lost by roughly 55,000 votes. The hypocrisy of all that shrieks loudly. And the market this week had a pretty good time, as on April Fool's Day, the S&P 500 went over 4,000 for the first time. Hopefully a portender of good things to come. But keep watching inflation and interest rates, two potentially problematic areas for investors and the economy widely down the road. Finally, this is Easter weekend, and with all that is going on, I'm hoping that each of you of the Christian faith has a truly blessed, happy, and wonderful Easter as we celebrate the resurrection of our Lord. I'm always reminded of something that happened several years ago, where a pretty far left reporter sent me a simple message on Easter morning. She said, "He is risen." The three most important words in history, "He is risen." And it reminded me of the fact that for all of our differences, that's something that truly brings us together, because Christ has won the victory, death is conquered, and we are free. And that's a reason for all of us to celebrate. Happy Easter. And for now, that is the very best 60 seconds of your week.